Hello and welcome to Module 2 in the Project Wingspan Learning Series. In this module, we will be learning about monarchs in Canada, including their biology, threats to survival, their status, and conservation plans. Let's have a look at our learning goals. In this module, we aim to understand the basic biology and development of monarch butterflies, summarize the monarch migration, describe what a host plant is, and list which plants monarch caterpillars and adults rely on. Identify threats to monarch butterflies, review the status of monarch butterflies, list several actions we can take to support monarch butterfly conservation in Canada. The monarch butterfly, whose scientific name is Danis plexippus, is the largest of the dianid butterflies, distinguished by its amber coloration, which is framed by black netting and white spots. The monarch is one of the most iconic butterfly species, and many of us have distinct memories of seeing monarchs in our childhood. Let's have a look at the monarch butterfly life cycle. The monarch butterfly, like other insects with complete metamorphosis, has 4 distinct stages: the egg, the larva or caterpillar, the pupa or chrysalis, and the adult. A female monarch lays between 100 to 300 eggs during her life. The eggs hatch about 4 days after they are laid. When the larvae first hatch, they are very small, less than 1 centimeter, but will soon grow to be about 5 centimeters. Monarchs have 5 instars, which are growth stages. In these stages, the caterpillar molts or sheds its skin between each instar to accommodate a growing body. Monarch development rates vary with temperature, but the complete larval life cycle can range from 2.5 to 4 weeks. After anywhere between 8 to 15 days, the monarch develops from a pupa into an adult. The completion of the 4-stage life cycle process is called complete metamorphosis. The emergence of the adult butterfly from the pupal stage is called eclosion. Generally, adult monarch butterflies live about a month, during which time they feed and reproduce. Now let's take a closer look at each developmental stage, beginning with the egg. Monarch eggs are very small, measuring only 1 to 2 millimeters. The eggs are pale yellow or creamy in color and have a rigid texture. They are generally found on the undersides of milkweed leaves, but they can be laid on the tops of leaves, the stems, or even the buds. This stage lasts 3 to 5 days. Now let's have a look at a caterpillar. The newly emerged monarch caterpillar is very small and pale with a dark head. Right after emerging, they eat their eggshell. This caterpillar starts small, being between 2 and 6 millimeters, but it will grow at a rate that increases its body size by more than 700% in the next 11 to 18 days. As the caterpillar grows and molts into further instars, its color scheme appears. The white, yellow, and black stripe pattern is visually striking. To potential predators, it signals an unpleasant experience as monarch caterpillars accumulate cardenolides, toxic organic compounds, while feeding on milkweed. These protect them. The caterpillars will pass through 4 instars and grow to almost 5 centimeters. In the second instar, they grow to 9 millimeters, then in the third to 14, in the fourth to 25, and finally, as they enter the 5th instar, some can grow over 45 millimeters. Here is a great image that compares the sizes, shapes, and patterning of the 5 instars on one leaf. This particular image was put together in a rearing lab, but it would not be uncommon to find a cluster of varied instars on a milkweed plant in the wild. You can see some very interesting features as the caterpillars grow, including both an increase in size, the development of antennae, and an increase in body fat. Fat is very important for caterpillars and adult butterflies. It is a storage form of energy for metabolic processes, such as metamorphosis, and it also provides additional stored fuel for flight. A fat caterpillar is a happy caterpillar. The pupa. When the caterpillar is ready to transition into a butterfly, it will find an area that is protected where it can hang and spin a cocoon or chrysalis. Monarch chrysalids are equally stunning as the caterpillars and butterflies. They are a shiny minty green with gold spots and details. They are difficult to see, which is by design, as the developing butterfly needs to be kept safe during this vulnerable period. Depending on the temperature, they can spend between 8 to 14 days in the chrysalis. The adult butterfly. After about 2 weeks, an adult monarch will emerge or eclose from the chrysalis. Monarchs are rather large butterflies. They have a deep orange or amber color that is bordered by black wing veins with little white spots. Their body is also black with white spots. An interesting fact, insects have 6 legs, but monarchs lose a pair during metamorphosis, and adult monarch butterflies have only 4 legs. The lifespan of an adult monarch butterfly generally is between 22 to 37 days. How do you tell adult males from females? There are 2 distinctive features that can be used to determine if you are looking at a male or female monarch butterfly. First, the black wing veins on females are much thicker, but this can be hard to notice if they are not side by side. The easier feature is to look for the male scent pouches. Monarch butterfly males have black patches on their hind wings. These are scent pouches that store the male pheromone, which attracts females. 2 black spots on the back wings, and it's a male. Now let's look at the food and host plants of monarch butterflies. We'll look at the importance of milkweed. Many butterflies rely on specific plant species as a food source for their larval stage. The larvae typically eat the plant parts, such as the leaves, flowers, or buds. This type of plant is called a host plant. Milkweed is the host plant for the monarch caterpillar. Monarch caterpillars need milkweed, and without milkweed, the larva would not be able to develop completely into a butterfly and would not have the characteristic chemical defense. Cardinalides, the toxic organic compounds found in milkweed sap, provide caterpillars and adults with a chemical defense against predation. There are more than 100 species of milkweeds across North America. Milkweeds. There are 14 species of milkweed in Canada. Monarch butterflies favor common milkweed, Asclepias syrica, swamp milkweed, Asclepias incarnata, butterfly milkweed, Asclepias tuberosa, and showy milkweed, Asclepias speciosa. Research has shown that nearly 85% of the monarchs that are overwintering in Mexico have developed on either common or showy milkweed. Now let's look at nectar plants. Adult monarch butterflies feed on nectar from flowers. Nectar contains sugars and other nutrients. Unlike the larvae that only eat milkweed, adult monarchs feed on nectar from a variety of flowers and will visit many kinds of flowers in their search for food throughout the day and the year. An abundance of nectar sources is especially important for migrating monarchs. This is the population that develops later in the season, at the end of the summer and beginning of the fall. Monarchs that are preparing to migrate south to Mexico need to consume enough nectar to build up fat reserves. The food they eat before and during the migration must not only power them through the long journey, but also sustain them through the winter. Overwintering monarchs feed very little, if at all. As monarchs travel south, they will gain weight as they continue to feed on nectar-bearing flowers along the journey. So what makes a good nectar plant? From the butterfly's perspective, flowers that are preferred by monarchs and butterflies in general are disc-shaped compound flowers that offer a landing pad. Monarchs don't have the ability to hover and feed, so they have to be able to land on a flower to be able to get the nectar. More specifically, the overall characteristics of flowers that attract butterflies are flowers that are red, pink, or purple in color, structures that are tubular, as butterflies can access deep nectar with their proboscis. As I just mentioned, a landing pad or a disc-shaped flower that can be landed on because butterflies can't hover. And they often are attracted to flowers with a mild scent. Flowers that provide a lot of nectar are preferred, as flight requires much energy. Compound flowers are ideal because you can get a lot of food with less work. Butterflies are looking for blooms during the day and throughout the spring, summer, and late summer. Now let's look at the monarch butterfly annual life cycle, which is also a continental life cycle. This is distinct as the life cycle of the monarch butterfly occurs through both space and time across North America. Most individual monarch butterflies live about a month, but the final supergeneration lives for up to 8 months. Monarchs will leave their wintering grounds and fly north, tracking nectar and milkweed. The monarchs that migrate south to wintering grounds have never been there before. The monarchs that migrate to the overwintering grounds in Mexico are actually the great-great-grandchildren of the monarchs that arrived there in the spring. Let's review this life cycle one more time. Monarchs leave the overwintering sites in the spring, around early March. Nutrition from early spring nectar-bearing flowers provides energy and nutrients for these monarchs to make their long journey. When they arrive at their spring breeding grounds sometime in late April or May, they will lay eggs and then die. As the first generation emerges, they will continue to migrate north and to lay eggs. The first generation are the children of the monarchs that overwintered in Mexico. They were born in the south and will move north to breed. As the generation of monarchs that are born in the north, this is the second generation, the children of the southern monarchs and the grandchildren of the overwintering monarchs continue to breed in the north. They will form the summer breeding populations. The third generation is born in the north and breeds in the north. They are the great-grandchildren of the overwintering monarchs. Finally, the fourth generation, the great-great-grandchildren of the overwintering population, are born in the north. They will prepare to migrate to Mexico as the summer turns to fall. These monarchs have never been to Mexico. It takes 4 generations of monarchs to complete their journey, and then the cycle starts over again. Monarchs travel a very long distance. When do we generally see monarchs in Canada? Monarchs tend to arrive in southern Ontario in the mid to late May, although in some years they may arrive sooner or be seen later, as this process is dependent on the temperature, wind patterns, and food availability across the United States and Mexico. By late June and early July, we have a large resident population. This is the summer breeding population, the second and third generations. Monarchs from across the United States and Canada make up the overwintering population in Mexico. Research has shown that between 15 to 18% of these overwintering monarchs come from Canada. This is a substantial proportion given the narrow geographic range that butterflies occupy in Canada compared to the large area of residency in the United States. When monarch butterflies overwinter, they aggregate in collective roosts, usually on oyamel fir trees, and enter a phase of lower metabolism or diapause. This allows them to survive the cooler temperatures and low food availability. They will stay in diapause for almost a 3-month period. Now let's have a look at the overwintering numbers of monarch butterflies. Monarch overwintering numbers have been monitored since 1993. The total occupied area in hectares is assessed, which can offer an estimate of monarch numbers through density. This measure is used to understand the status of monarch populations over time. The annual numbers are reported in the new year and are an indicator of population trends. On March 6, the World Wildlife Fund, Telmex Telcel Foundation Alliance, and the National Commission of Protected Natural Areas in Mexico released data from the winter 2024-2025 monarch butterfly population count. Monarchs occupied 1.79 hectares compared to 0.9 hectares at the same time last year. This represents a 99% increase, the biggest jump since the monarch overwintering area increased from 2.48 hectares to 6.05 hectares from December 2017 to December 2018. While any increase is great news, the number is still far below the average for the past decade, which stood at 2.81 hectares, and is still far less than the colony size when researchers first started measuring. Overall decline in 1996-97 is attributed to an increase in the use of Roundup Ready crops and the overuse of glyphosate that removed milkweed and wildflowers in the American Midwest. Low overwintering numbers in 2009, 2013, and 2023 are attributed to early or late season winter storms that impacted monarchs during their migratory flight. These events are becoming more and more common with climate change. Now let's have a look at the threats facing monarch butterflies. Habitat loss. Habitat loss is the leading cause of monarch decline. It takes many forms across the continent. Within the United States and Canada, agricultural intensification and urbanization have removed huge amounts of natural landscapes that provided milkweed and nectar plants. Illegal logging of oyamel fir is threatening overwintering populations in Mexico. Another significant threat is climate change. Climate change can have numerous impacts on monarch butterflies. Changes in temperature and precipitation can impact the growth of host and nectar plants and can also impact the development of monarch caterpillars. A phenomenon known as phenological mismatch is when the development of plants and pollinators that has been linked through evolution start to dissociate, meaning that the connection between the pollinator emerging and the flowers blooming starts to separate in time. Global averages of dissociation have been calculated at 1 to 2 days on average. However, some species have shown as much as 10 days dissociation, which is disastrous for pollinator survival. Climate change also impacts the nutritional quality of pollen and nectar, reducing fat, protein, and sugar concentration. This can have a significant impact on migratory pollinators that have high energy requirements. Severe weather events also increase, such as the incidence of early or late season winter storms, and these cause high mortality to migrating monarchs that are not able to withstand the cold and snow. Disease. Like all organisms, monarchs are threatened by diseases, pests, parasites, and pathogens. These include Black Death, which is a bacterial infection that causes the caterpillar to turn black and die. Tachinid flies are parasitic flies that lay eggs outside of the caterpillar or chrysalis that then feed on its body. The most concerning disease, however, is OE, or Ophocystis electroscira, a protozoan parasite that infects the butterfly's wings and reduces its lifespan and reproductive ability. The incidence of OE is increasing with climate change. Invasive plant species are a significant threat to monarchs, especially in Ontario. Dog strangling vine, the common name for two Eurasian milkweeds, black swallowwort and pale swallowwort, is present and expanding its range throughout Ontario. It is an aggressive, rapidly growing invasive. Dog strangling vine forms dense stands that overwhelm and overcrowd native plants, young trees, and prevent forest regeneration. The vine threatens the monarch butterfly because butterflies that lay their eggs on dog strangling vine do not have larvae that complete their life cycle development, and they do not survive. Lastly, pesticides, insecticides, and herbicides. Both pesticides and insecticides are harmful to monarch butterflies. Insecticides cause monarch butterflies direct mortality, as well as indirect impacts that are sublethal, such as slower or smaller caterpillar development, cognitive impairment, reduced reproductive output. Though they do not cause direct mortality, sublethal impacts are often more concerning because they weaken the ability of the population to grow, thrive, and survive. Herbicides have had an even more significant impact on monarch populations by removing critical host plants and forage plants, especially within agriculture, where herbicide-resistant crops are planted and herbicides can be used more broadly. The increased prevalence of planting herbicide-resistant corn and soy in the American Midwest is considered the driving factor of monarch population decline that was common in the mid-1990s. This coincides with the dramatic decrease in monarch numbers recorded in overwintering populations, a decrease the population has not recovered from. Now let's consider the status of monarch butterflies in Canada. The monarch butterfly had its status upgraded to endangered in 2023 under Canada's Species at Risk Act. Endangered status provides legal protection and mandated action for the butterfly on federal lands. Actions on non-federal lands are not impacted by this designation. This means that the actions of individuals and groups are vital to supporting the monarch butterfly. In Ontario, the species is listed as of special concern. In the United States, there is a proposed listing of the monarch as threatened with Rule 4D, meaning that considerations are available to landowners that have existing monarch habitat on their land. In Mexico, the monarch status is considered protección especial, meaning that the species has special protected status. The monarch is also legally protected within the Monarch Butterfly Biosphere Reserve, which is a designated UNESCO World Heritage Site. There are both national and international conservation plans focusing on monarch butterflies. They have an identical goal and outline the roles each nation has, Canada, the United States, and Mexico, in supporting monarchs. This universal goal is a target of 6 hectares of overwintering monarchs. Mexico's role in this plan is to protect the overwintering areas. Canada and the United States work to support the breeding populations of monarchs. That means in Canada, we need to focus on providing monarch butterflies with food, host and nectar plants, so that they will have the largest population possible to make their migration down to overwinter. Monarch conservation in Canada involves organizations taking action. Research on monarch population dynamics suggests that the best conservation strategy is to protect and restore habitat across their breeding range. This is the most likely strategy to ensure long-term population viability. This means adopting an ecosystem and landscape level approach. This also means integrating monarch conservation into existing programs and landscape management regimes. This version of conservation has often been called the all-hands-on-deck approach. We are aiming to create corridors and connectivity. Nectar corridors are a series of habitat patches along the monarch migration route that contain plants which flower at the appropriate times during the spring and fall migrations. These patches provide stopping off points for the migrating butterflies to refuel and continue their journey. Butterflies are small and mighty, but they are small, and they have limitations as to how far they can travel each day and along their migratory route. Having these islands of nectar sources is particularly important within large areas of urban and agricultural development. The patches or corridors of nectar allow monarchs to follow stepping stones across a stream to complete their migration. And to reiterate, our goal in Canada is responsible for breeding, supporting resident populations with milkweed and nectar. Nectar corridors are a series of habitat patches along the migratory route that connect plants that flower at the appropriate time of year in the spring and fall migrations. A classic example of this sort of connectivity are monarch way stations. So what can you do? Small steps really do add up to big change. If a monarch butterfly can make it all the way to Mexico from Canada and back, we can plant the food they like to help them along the way. The solution is quite simple. Plant milkweed and nectar plants everywhere so that we can connect habitat patches separated by human development. Another vital characteristic of patches and habitat corridors is the absence of pesticide use. We often say that monarchs, like all pollinators, need good, clean habitat, and lots of it. This goal is achievable if we all work together and do our part. What you can do: plant milkweed and key nectar plants everywhere, especially if your habitat is within key priority areas, which are near the shores of Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, and along the St. Lawrence, and within agriculture. Planting is fundamental, but there are also other ways to get involved in monarch conservation, including participating in community science initiatives that increase our understanding of monarch butterflies and the migration. Local monitoring programs like Mission Monarch out of the Montreal Insectarium get vital statistics about annual populations of caterpillars and butterflies in Canada. Participating in monarch tagging helps us understand how local populations fare on their journey to the overwintering grounds. It's also very satisfying to follow a monarch that you have tagged on its journey and find out if they made it. You can collect milkweed and nectar plant seeds via Project Wingspan, and you can also work with local groups and agencies to remove invasive species like dog strangling vine to help improve habitat for monarch butterflies. In summary, in this module, you have learned the basic biology and development of monarch butterflies. You've learned the unique phenomenon of the monarch migration. You've discovered the importance of host plants and habitat connectivity to monarch butterflies. You've learned about the conservation status of monarch butterflies in Canada. You've understood how actions in Canada directly impact monarch populations in Mexico. And you've been empowered to engage in conservation at any scale. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation.